spending will not do. So in conclusion, from the H1N1 pandemic in 1918 to MERS, to SARS, to Ebola, and to now COVID-19, pandemics and epidemics have had devastating effects. We need to prepare now for the next pandemic. And I think for us as WHO, we are really keen to support this program because we need to create this leadership profile for us to address a cadre of people who can respond to public health emergencies, epidemics, pandemics, small scale, large scale. I thank you very much. And WHO is very, very glad to be part of this launch.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ambrose, and thank you for giving that in the context of the overall disease burden that's on the continent, as well as the need to build health systems that can cope with any shock events in the future, as well as then tying that into the importance of the program that we will be launching today. So thank you very much. That was Dr. Ambrose Talisuna of the World Health Organization. It's time for us now to invite Ms. Caroline Mbinjo, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Amrev Health Africa Innovation. Ms. Caroline, you have the floor.
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, good afternoon, warm greetings to you all from Nairobi. When we think of this COVID pandemic, it has been said by many to be an equalizer. Indeed, the disease has transcended regions, wealth, fame, prestige, and age. But we have seen that the very necessary approaches that have been taken to flatten the curve, to reduce the strain on the health facilities and health systems, have inadvertently, preferentially harmed the socially disadvantaged. This includes women and girls, low-income groups, persons with disabilities, persons with low literacy, etc. And even more so for people who fall within more than one of this group. We have seen a sharp rise in gender-based violence, in teenage pregnancies, an increase in poverty due to loss of livelihoods and income, especially for women, an increase in mental health issues, an increase in hunger, particularly for children. And as Dr. Ambrose mentioned, we have seen reduced access to essential health services, including maternal and child health and chronic care services. Other sectors, including sports and entertainment, education, travel and tourism, manufacturing, have all been disrupted and in many cases devastated. Indeed, the indirect effects of COVID-19 pandemic may end up being both more long-term and more deadly than COVID-19 itself. Clearly, this public health crisis is in fact a whole of society crisis. If there are any opportunities from this very difficult 14 months, I would say it is in giving us, the global community, the will and the imperative to better prepare for the next pandemic, and to do so with urgency. At Amrev, we look at this as an opportunity to course correct, to be more inclusive in our current response and our future preparedness, to build back better together across communities, across sectors, and across countries. For this to happen, we need informed and courageous leadership. The aim of the course that we are launching today is to nurture leadership, to manage increased public health emergencies in Africa through a collaborative approach. The program will be co-created using design thinking principles and will work to develop country-specific emergency preparedness and response initiatives, plans, and measures. Working with all stakeholders, we at MSD, at Africa CDC, at WHO, at Amrev Health Africa, hope that this program will build resilient health systems for rapid and effective containment and disease outbreaks in Africa. We at Amrev look forward to working with you all on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline from Amrev, which is the African Medical and Research Foundation. And thank you for really highlighting the fact that COVID-19 is an equalizer, and it has impact across many demographic groups as well as socioeconomic sectors. You've also spoken about the need to prepare for future pandemics, which has been a running theme throughout all the presentations that were made this morning. So now let me call upon Dr. John Nkengasong, and he is the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And his role in this section is really to launch that leadership program that we have been talking about. Dr. John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Wayne, and all the colleagues who have spoken. I mean, first of all, let me really recognize the spirit of partnership that is prevailing. There's nothing in leadership that can be achieved with one organization, given the complexities of the things that we are dealing with and the severity of what these pandemics bring on us. So let me thank Amrev, MSD, WHO, of course, the African Union Commission for always being there to provide their political muscles to supporting these initiatives. The second reflection I have here is that leadership is key. And these programs will begin to develop next generation public health experts and leaders that will be managing these programs into the future. We also want to recognize the work that people like Dr. Taj, who is on this program and has been co-leading it from our side, Alex Coutinho from Uganda. Others have been working very hard to drive forward our Kofi Annan Global Health Leadership Program. And the first cohort of that program is already on. We're very excited. I mean, we moved from a very tedious and a very competitive process of selecting 20 very competent global health leaders out of a very competitive process of 600 applicants. I think, again, that all speaks to the importance of all of us trying to develop the next generation of public health leaders. I will just conclude by saying you can all count on my commitment, my personal commitment, our colleagues from MSD, Amrev, and of course, WHO, to work closely with you so that we can move this very important program forward. This is the moment we have to show solidarity, cooperation, and enhance all our assets as much as possible so that we can better apply them to fighting this deadly pandemic, and of course, win the battle at hand and then prepare for the next battle. As all of us have said, from a different standpoint, we live in an area of pandemics. We will definitely overcome this, but they will also be facing another pandemic in future. So I thank you all for your great spirit of collaboration, of partnership, in the spirit of a new public health order that the African Union is promoting across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And I just want to reiterate that you've mentioned there the importance of those very important African characteristics of cooperation, collaboration, and solidarity to personal commitment to making sure that this leadership program actually succeeds in collaboration with the different partners that we have today. So let me thank everyone who has spoken, and also now say that we are now moving into our question and answer session. Colleagues, journalists who are joining us, we have about 25 minutes. So if you have a question to any of our panelists, please indicate as such when you write down your question in the Q&A section or when you come on live to speak. But let me start by taking questions that have come in on the Q&A section. And the first one is from Lawrence Caramel. And Lawrence is with Le Monde. So he says, Seychelles has experienced a surge in new cases. despite being massively vaccinated. Do you have explanations for this? And that is for Dr. John.
Yeah, that is what there are many unknowns with this pandemic. I think, but we know generally that when you vaccinate at scale and at speed, you blunt the spread of the virus. You blunt the severity of outcomes and hospitalization. We have seen this in the UK, we've seen this in Israel, we've seen this now, begin to see this now in the United States. So vaccines work. The situation in Seychelles, we still don't have the full picture of that. So let me only respond to that by saying that we will look at that very closely and work with the government of Seychelles to understand what is going on in the context. Who are these people that are being infected, and have they been vaccinated? So give us time to look into do a detailed and in-depth analysis of the situation in Seychelles. But overall, let me just repeat myself. We have seen Israel actually moving into a situation where after their vaccination program at scale and at speed, where you see that even people are beginning to move around almost without masks. And we are seeing the situation in the UK and the United States there. So let's continue to remain hopeful. And the key here is to vaccinate at scale and vaccinate at speed.
Thank you very much. We have another question coming your way from Judith Akolo of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. And Judith says the Director General of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Patrick Amoth, yesterday announced that the Indian double mutant of COVID-19 had been detected in 5 people in Kisumu County in Kenya. And this is at a time when Kenya has been reporting a drop in new cases. So she says, my question is, are we about to see another wave of infections owing to the presence of the Indian double variant? And also, what should Kenya and the public do to avert such a worrying situation?
So let me address the variant situation as I've done before, where essentially I've made it very clear that the variants are all still part of the COVID-19, the virus that causes COVID-19 illness, which means we know how to prevent these, we know the public health measures that can prevent the infections from this, which clearly is, let's wear a mask and do that consistently and in a way that and do it correctly. Consistency and correct use of masks is very, very important. We see on the streets around the major cities, masks being worn in all kinds of manners. I think that doesn't help us. Second is, let's deny the opportunity for any virus to circulate, whether it's a variant, be it the P1 variant, the 617 variant, the B117 variant, or the B135 variant. Let's deny it the opportunity to spread by not organizing large gatherings or gatherings that will enable people to come in contact. Once we offer the virus the opportunity, it will spread. And so again, social distancing, I know we want to have the warmth of our loved ones and go back to normality. Let's know that this is not normal times. I think that is very, very clear. Hand hygiene, very, very important. If we do those things, okay, like we've done before, then you have a chance that what kind of variant, whether it's the P1 or all those variants that I've listed, you can prevent it. So it's not, I don't think I'll raise an alarm there, but know that these variants can transmit easily. So that is even the reason why should be executed and practiced all the time by all of us. It is collective accountability at an individual level. It is collective responsibility because we want to protect our loved ones and protect ourselves.
Thank you very much, John. We have colleagues who are joining us online who want to ask questions online. And the first one that we have is Simon Ateba. Simon, please introduce yourself and the news organization that you're working with, and then ask your question.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. This is Simon Ateba with Today News Africa in Washington, D.C. Dr. Nkenkason, how many vaccine doses and how fast can they be manufactured locally in Africa? as a result of waivers on intellectual properties being backed by the Biden administration? And what are other challenges apart from waivers in terms of production and distribution of vaccine? Because the situation seems to be dire. Only 37 million vaccines for a continent of 1.3 billion people. Less than 1% of people have been vaccinated so far. Thank you.
Absolutely, the situation is dire. To put it, I mean, just to confirm what your sentiments are, and we have to be very careful that we do not translate waiver into some things that will happen overnight. It will not. I mean, it will take time for that to translate in, but it offers a unique opportunity for a continental manufacturing agenda to advance. Remember, on the 12th and 13th of April, the President Tshisekedi, the President of the Republic of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the current chair of the African Union launched the Partnership for African Vaccine Manufacturing. And the key word there is partnership. We need partnerships to enable us to, on our own, of course, we will be challenged, and it takes a lot of time for us to get to where we need to be. But with the right partnerships, we can get there. I mean, if we build partnerships around the Pasteur's Institute in Senegal, about what President Kagame is promoting in Rwanda around the messenger RNAs, that what South Africa is doing and what Morocco is doing, that is the platforms that already exist on our continent, then you can, in the next coming months, begin to see a significant shift in the number of vaccines that are produced. I mean, in a conversation with the Pasteur Institute in Senegal, for example, they said, look, John, if we are supported appropriately, the next couple of months, beginning the first quarter of next year, we can begin to produce up to about 40 million doses of vaccines from that facility alone in Senegal. But it requires partnerships. It requires that we also incentivize the process by providing rallying financing around that. So those are some of the things that we need to get us to where we need to be. So this announcement is a significant development, and it represents a very good step in the right direction. But the results will not be tomorrow in this current situation. What we need now and urgently is vaccines that we can put in the arms of people, and why developing our own vaccine manufacturing capacity or capabilities.
Thank you very much, John. Colleagues from the media, we have a lot of questions that are coming in today. So let me encourage you, please, to prioritize your questions, and let's limit ourselves to one question per person. Thank you very much for your cooperation. So now let me go back online and call for Girum Chala, who has his hand up. Girum, good morning. Hello, Girum, good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Wayne.
Morning, Girum. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. Thank you so much. We appreciate the time you've given us. My question, one question, as you've said, I want to talk about African economies. People are losing their jobs. It's been a while since this happened. Economies are being affected. The continuation is even scary. I remember an initiative, Saving Lives, Livelihoods, and Economies, that Africa CDC and the African Union has launched. Are we going to save African economies? What do you really suggest? While at the same time, African economies are fighting the pandemic, they can really bring economies back and give people their jobs back. Dr. John, what do you think about this?
No, absolutely. I'm happy, Girum, you mentioned that campaign we launched last year, which was has been a very successful campaign that was underpinned by the need to secure ability to travel, which now you see that people are traveling across the continent using the trusted travel platform, which if you have traveled from Nairobi and Kigali and other places, you see that platform is being used. That is the product of that launch. Other components, Dr. The Commissioner Amani, the Commissioner of the AU, is driving that process of vaccine passport and making sure that our voices are heard. that we do not, that the world do not begin to impose travel vaccine passports on people who don't have access to vaccines like us. So that is very important, and it has direct implications for economy, which is if we as a continent are not allowed to travel because of the imposition of vaccine passport, then our economies will suffer further. I think that is that. Then, if you remember, President Ramaphosa had in place a whole set of envoys who were working on the economic fund. Dr. Donna Kaburuka, Dr. Tijam Cham, and others, Vera Songwed, were all working on that. And you all know that, I mean, a lot of progress has been made in the areas of special drawing rights, the so-called SDRs. From the International Monetary Fund, and that will be another area where the economies will be, the shocks that economies have gone through will begin to be repaired. So, but we believe strongly that the best incentive for economy is for us to vaccinate at speed and at scale. That is the best incentive that anyone can boost our economies, because if we do that, then we go back to normal life, and then we start traveling, trading freely across the continent. So again, the best tool that we can have, injection that we can have into our economy, is vaccination. I'll end up by repeating our simple formula at Africa CDC, which says vaccines plus vaccination equals life saves equals economy saves. So on one side of the equation is the vaccines plus vaccination. On the other side is life saves and economy save.
Thank you very much. Let me take some questions from our WhatsApp platform. And this is from Coletta Wanjohi, who has a number of questions, but I will take the first one. So she says, kindly give us some details about the pertinent issues that the upcoming meeting of Ministers of Health will take. And that question is similarly asked by Simon Valmari from AFP in Nairobi. So they want to know about the details of the upcoming ministerial meeting.
So thank you, Coletta. That's a very good question. And we, as you all have seen, on Saturday, the president of the African Union, President Tshisekedi, jointly with the COVID champion, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the chair of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, will be convening a meeting of an emergency meeting of all ministers of health to do essentially two things. One is to review the implementation of our joint continental strategy, which was launched last year. If you remember, on February 22nd, Chairperson Faki convened an emergency meeting of all ministers of health in Addis Ababa. That is February 22nd, 2020. It's more than a year now, slightly above a year that meeting took place. And the Bureau of the Head of States endorsed that strategy on the 26th of March. And it is time to go back and say, at that time when we launched that strategy, we knew very little about the variants. At that time when we launched the strategy, we knew very little about the vaccines. We didn't even know if we were going to get the vaccines, but now here we are, we have the vaccines. When we launched it, our testing level were almost non-existent. I mean, testing for COVID at that time in March was very, very limited. Less than 200,000 tests were conducted. Now we are a year into that. The situation has changed. Variants are there emerging and circulating very rapidly. Vaccines are there. We are challenged with that. And then what do we do? The key question then becomes, what do we do? And that is a second part of this, the meeting will address the need for an adapted strategy, which will be looking more around the areas of how do we look at monitor more, okay, look at monitoring, surveillance for these variants, surveillance for hotspots. How do we then intensify our prevention efforts? Like in the areas of vaccines are all part of prevention, increase and maintain public health measures are all part of prevention, and then treatment, making sure that we have enough oxygen and other therapeutics that can help us. So those are, the two major things that will be discussed there, i.e., how effective we have been in implementing our joint program, and what is the new direction going with respect to what we are seeing now with the variants and the vaccine and vaccination situation on the continent.
Thank you, John. Let me go back online and invite George May to ask his question. George, please just start by telling us your news agency and then ask your one question. Hello, George, you are muted. Please unmute your microphone and tell us your news agency.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, George.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm George Tame, and I'm with Jambo Radio Scotland. We are for the African diaspora here in Scotland. So my question is, given the fact that the waiver by the US on the intellectual property of the vaccine, we hear that despite the US support of this, there could be other objections from different, economies from different countries. Can Dr. Kenson confirm that the US backing of this, it might not be an appropriate question for him, but can he give us some more light on that, whether despite the US backing, could there be any interruption to the course of that waiver?
Very good question, George, and I truly don't know. We are still welcoming and celebrating the good announcement from Washington, and we hope that everyone else in this fight will try to be in the right side of history. When the history of this pandemic is written, you want at least to be remembered that in time of needs, in time of moral imperative, you were on the right side of history. As a continent, when this is all over, this pandemic is all over, and it will be over, we are a resilient continent. We will remember not just the loud voices of those who do not support us, but we'll also remember the silence of our friends in this battle. And that will be very, very important. That we people collectively see this as a critical point in humanity and do the right thing. And the right thing will be to follow through the leadership that the United States government has exercised in this matter.
Thank you, John, and thank you, George, for reaching out to us after quite some time. We're also glad to know that we have a voice in the diaspora, so thank you for that. Now, continuing on the subject of the waiver by the United States, I want to join two questions. So the first one being from Samuel Buri, who is with the Swiss Public Radio. So he says to Dr. Nkengasong, regarding the US supporting the temporary lift of patent protection for coronavirus vaccines, how long would it take for African countries to start producing COVID vaccines? So let me join that with a question that's coming from Kara Anna, who is with Associated Press. And Kara says, thank you for the briefing. What would you like to say to countries like Britain that don't support the waiving of IP rules on vaccines?
I think how soon will this translate into manufacturing? I think I already addressed that earlier, which I said we have about 6 countries in Africa that are already producing vaccines, that is non-COVID vaccines. The Pasteur Institute in Senegal, the Aspen and Bavac in South Africa, Pasteur Institute in Morocco, Tunis, and Egypt. So there are sites that, given the severity of what we are going through, request appropriate partnerships to rally around them, support them so that they can start producing vaccines. I also just cited the situation with the Pasteur Institute in Senegal, where their own analysis is showing that if we're supported by first quarter of next year, they can begin to produce about 40 million doses of vaccine, which will be significant. So that's all I can tell you at this point. With respect to the other countries who have not yet rallied behind IP. My message is what I said earlier. It's a call, an appeal to the international community and to our partners that please be on the right side of history, because history will remember this. We do not want history to repeat itself. In 1996, Kara, you remember the disaster that had happened in Africa, where ARV drugs were available in the developed world, but it would take almost 10 years for them to get into Africa. I was a young public health expert in Cote d'Ivoire at that time, and it was pathetic. And between that period, about 12 million Africans died, I would say, needlessly. The swine fever situation, pandemic in 2009 reminds us exactly of that, when the rich countries had the vaccines vaccinated, but only made the vaccines available to the developing countries when the pandemic was over. We don't want that history to repeat itself. There are consequences to this. When we do not apply ourselves appropriately, when history calls on us to do so, then we break the trust capital. And it becomes very difficult for the trust capital, which is an important tool that governs all of us, to be rehabilitated. So it's really an appeal to others who control that space to look into the example of the United States and do the right thing. This is the time to do a courageous thing, a courageous act, do the right thing, not the easy thing.
All right, thank you for that. Let me take a question from Elizabeth Merab, who is with the Nation Africa in Nairobi. So Elizabeth says, what is the Africa CDC telling governments in the region to do to avoid the India scenario? And is there any effort that is being put to prepare national agencies to prepare for such an emergency situation?
Yes, I mean, that is exactly why we are calling this emergency meeting on Saturday. And of all ministers of health across the continent, and the outcome of that will be a set of measures that, I mean, as I explained earlier when I addressed Coleta's question, a set of measures that we will be moving forward with or recommending to all member states to apply themselves to. And especially, very, very especially, is that the pandemic is here. We cannot let our guards down. We cannot be complacent. And we see that there's pandemic fatigue. And we fully understand that people have been going through this for the last close to 1 year and a couple of months. And there may be prevention fatigue, but the virus is not tired. We might be tired, but the virus is not tired. So let's read and see what is going on in India, and with the understanding that it can very easily be a scenario in Africa. So coming out of the meeting on Saturday will be a set of measures that continental public health experts will adopt, and we will be happy to work with them, of course, with WHO to implement them in member states.
Thank you for that. Let's say good morning to Peter Fabricius from the Daily Maverick in South Africa. Good morning, Peter. Please ask us your question.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, I had already put a question and was also relating to Saturday's meeting. But let me try just to, if you could take it a little bit further, Dr. John. I mean, do you think that it's theoretically possible for Africa to prepare for an attack, a resurgent attack on the scale of India, given the, as you said, the lack of oxygen, the lack of vaccines, the lack of a whole lot of things which we would need. So, I mean, you've been talking so far to this week and last week about stepping up on public health measures, which is one thing. But on the other end of the scale, all those other things we'd need in the terms of treatment, vaccines, and so on, if there is a sudden upsurge, which hasn't happened, luckily, you know, is it theoretically possible for Africa to be ready?
I think let me divide my reflections in two parts. One is that if we prevent it, then we don't need to get ourselves into the catastrophic situation that might happen. And it is very, very possible to prevent it, and we have to prevent it. I mean, that is, how do we do that? I mean, and I just gave a presentation before this meeting at a permanent representative committee of the ambassadors in Addis, and I said, let's study the situation in India very, very carefully, and that is what we'll be doing on Saturday. What are some of the elements that led to that situation? One was that the public health measures were losing up quickly. Second was that as the public health measures were losing up very quickly, you got into a situation where mass gatherings and religious ceremonies that require that many people together in March and February timeline happen, and then the virus seed itself in there, and you can see some of the picture. This is not me saying it. I mean, the Times of India, if you read that whole article, you see all these factors there. Thirdly is the new variant. Then because people were gathering, the variant took advantage. A virus that, or a variant that naturally transmit quickly, you offer it the opportunity to even transmit quicker. So I mean, so a combination of these factors completely led a fertile ground for a tsunami to occur in India, and it occurred. So if we look at that, we study it very, very carefully. I mean, and begin to implement those measures. Then no political rallies, no political parties, no gathering during religious. I mean, you can still worship, but respect social distancing, wearing of masks. Then we prevent the second part of it, which is the disaster part of that, where health systems are completely overwhelmed. If you look at India, big cities like New Delhi, Mumbai. Hospitals beds are almost our health systems on the continent, of course, we all know is very fragile. We do not have the kind of supplies that India has, so we don't even want to get there. So I'll leave it at let's rally around, build our defenses, and make sure that we do the right set of, put the right set of measures in place, and then hit the reset button, and I'm sure that we can avoid that scenario.
Thank you very much, John. My producer says we can take the last two questions and then close. So let me throw them to our panelists. So the first question that we have, and I'd like this to be answered firstly by our representative from MSD. So we have someone called Benjamin Tu, who's writing to us from Kenya. And Benjamin says, how will you select people for the public health emergency preparedness training? So MSD representative, Mr. Zweletu.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, very much so.
Thank you very much. So I believe what will happen, a lot of the work that we'll be doing will be sort of co-created amongst all the participants. And so we will be taking the respective countries that are going to be participating, will submit 4 nominations per country to join the course, and this will be preceded sort of by formal applications and expressions of interest. These nominations will then be reviewed, and the best participants would then be selected from that.
All right. WHO, do you have a comment on that? Hello, Dr. Talisuna. Dr. Talisuna. All right, I think we have...
He's lost audio.
Yeah, perhaps he's lost his audio. Let me refer then to Caroline Binjo of Amrev.
Thank you, Wayne. Just to add on to what Zweli has already mentioned, We are looking at using digital tools to provide access to this training so that we can increase the number of people who can be able to access the training program over the period that it will be offered. We want to be able to respond to the demand and to reach people in all the different stakeholder communities that want to take this course. We want to be inclusive. We want to think about the accessibility of this course for the people who speak different languages, the people who may require things like sign language translation. So we want to think very broadly with the stakeholders. And I would invite anybody who is interested in learning more about this program then to join us in the next session where we'll be giving further details.
All right, thank you very, very much. I think we have now run out of time, but we still have a lot of questions. So for colleagues who still want to ask questions, please can you send your issues to this WhatsApp number? And the number is +251 94 550 2310. That's +251 94 550 2310. So to conclude, let me just do one last round and invite our speakers to give their final comments. Let me start among our panelists from the bottom. Again, let me come back to Caroline for your closing remarks in 1 minute, please.
Thank you. So we're very excited to be working with all of you. We want to ensure that the leadership course that is being developed includes the needs and the voices, not just of the people in the health sector, but across all sectors that are affected by this pandemic. So we look forward to that collaborative approach to developing and deploying this course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ambrose, do you have final closing remarks?
I think this leadership course, I lost connectivity a bit a few minutes ago. I think this leadership course really, and what COVID-19 has unraveled is we need to be prepared, and we need to be prepared for both to manage outbreaks, but across all the cadres. There are several areas where we've been having this discussion, and I think countries will need to assess their capacity gaps. And I think if you look at the discussion on the resurgence in India and how we should be prepared for it, it's really a question of how ready are we. And I think John articulated that issue of being able to prevent. I think on the African continent, what happened in the COVID outbreak is that I think political leadership was very good, that countries put in measures before we got the first case. So we really, that political commitment and the Saturday meeting are very critical. But I think what I can say to close is really this leadership course builds on our ongoing work to synergize with the efforts that are on and partners. So I'm really very glad as WHO to be part of this launch.
Thank you very much. Let's have the closing remarks from Mr. Bashman, who is the MD of South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa for MSD.
Thank you very much. I think for us, we really are excited about participating in the process and the program, in co-creating the program. As I mentioned earlier, our sort of underlying sort of reason for being is to invent medicines that are essential for life. We firmly believe that that goes hand in hand with broadening access, as well as ensuring that we have a robust health system that is able to accept, treat, and deal with the needs of patients. And that's why we've participated in this process. We see it as being an essential part of the work that we need to do as a pharmaceutical company. And we look forward in walking this journey with all the partners, because we do believe that it will have a real impact on the patients of the African continent.
Thank you very much. Dr. John, your closing remarks.
No, first of all, I really like to again congratulate those who have been working very quietly and for over the last couple of weeks and months to leading up to the launch of this course. They probably heard preparedness and response leadership, which is extremely important for our continent. And again, it speaks to the spirit of partnership and cooperation that we all want to see across the continent. And you can again count on the Africa CDC's leadership support, as well as the African Union Commission support for this. We want, and of course, Amrev, for the kind of partnership that we are all been talking about in the spirit of what we call trusted partnerships. So this is very, very important. The second, for WHO, of course, we have been working together for forever. So it's not new if we say it's no new news if we say we are working with WHO on this, but it's a lot of news if we are working with Amrev and with MSD here. A second and last point, Win, is that let's take the situation in India lightly as a continent. If you look at the epidemiological curve of what India was going through up to March and April, and you look at our epidemiological curve now, they bear striking similarities, and similarities that can easily make you feel complacent that you have the virus under control. Then when it escapes, I would just end up by saying that despite the variants that are circulating, we know what works, and we can, if we apply ourselves diligently and in a more deliberate manner and implement what works, then we can avoid the situation that we are seeing in India, which is essentially deny the virus space to spread by avoiding mass gatherings, be it political, religious, or any gatherings for that matter. The virus did not jump and fly in the air. I mean, it is when we offer the virus to spread, they spread because of human behavior. Second is, let's be consistent with masks. Masks work. I mean, we know absolutely that they work. I mean, and while waiting for vaccines to come, we have to do those things there. Hand hygiene is very important, and personal response, the health of our own loved ones. Do those things, then we would absolutely avoid the situation that we are seeing in India. So I'd like to thank you all for always being present on this platform so that we can collectively address this, the challenge we have on our hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of the Africa CDC. So in conclusion, colleagues, let me just remind you of that very important launch that will be happening later this afternoon, and that is the launch of the Public Health Emergency and Preparedness and Response Leadership Program, which is due to take place from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. East African time. And there's a fantastic lineup of speakers, specifically Her Excellency Commissioner for Social Affairs Department at the AU Commission, Mrs. Amira El Fadil, Dr. Merawi Arago, who used to be coming to us with details on the Ebola outbreak, will be part of that panel. Mr. Zweletu Bashman, who is with us in this one, as well as Dr. Ambrose, who's also with us. They will be there this afternoon. They will also be joined by Elizabeth Ntonjira, who is the Global Communications Director for Amrev Health, Dr. Gitinji Gitahi, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Amrev Health Africa, Mr. Jobin Abraham, who is the Director of Learning and Capacity Development at Resolve to Save Lives. So we really have a very exciting lineup for the remainder of the day, hoping that you will be able to join us from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. East African time. But for now, I want to bring this press briefing to a close and thank you very much for your participation, as well as to thank all our panelists for having joined us. Let's meet again next week on Thursday at the same time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Very well done.
Thank you. Well done to you. Thanks a lot.
You must mentor me. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just great. Okay.
All right.